Good day to you all. Right. Today I'm going to do a revision on Municipal Admin N5. A full paper revision. A full paper revision. So I'm going to revise 2023 November question paper. 2023 November question paper. Right. So let's go to 1.1. Give one act for each of the following description by writing it next to the question number 1.11 to 1.16 in the answer box, right? So we're going to give the correct word, right, of the act, the correct act, right? Right. Let's go to 1.1. 1.1. This act makes provision for the determination of boundaries. That's what you call a demarcation act. That's what you call a demarcation act. A demarcation act. Demarcation act. Provision for determination of boundaries. Boundaries, right? Demarcation act. Right. Let's go to 1.2. 1.12. This act secures the sound and sustainable management of fiscal and financial affairs of municipalities by establishing norms and standards. This one is what you call Municipal Financial Management Act. Municipal Financial Management Act. Municipal Financial Management Act. It has to do with the financing what? Municipalities. Financial affairs of what? Of municipalities. Right. Let's go to 1.13. This act makes provision for the framework of new local government in South Africa. That's what you call the white paper for new local government act. The white paper for new local government act. White paper for new government act. It makes provision for the framework of a new local government in South Africa. Right, let's go to 1.14. This act focuses on community participation, IDP, performance management, local administration, credit control, and debit collection. That's what we call Municipal Financial Management Act. Municipal Financial Management Act. Municipal Financial Management Act. This one is also Municipal Financial Management Act. It does also focus on community participation, local administration, credit control, and debt collection. Right, let's go to 1.15. This act prescribes procedures relating to property valuations in municipalities. Like that's what we call Municipal Property Rates Act. Municipal Property Rates Act. Right. 1.16. This act allows general elections and stipulates the power of local authority in South Africa. This act is what we call a local government electoral Electoral Act, Local Government Electoral Act, Local Government Electoral Act, Local Government Electoral Act. It does the elections and the powers of municipality in South Africa. Let's go to 1.2. 1.2. Indicate whether the following statements are true or false by writing true or false next to the question number. Right. 1.21. South Africa became a republic in 1994. That is false. That is false. Right. So let's go to 1.22. Municipal legislations are known as ordinances. It is also false. The statement is false. Right. And then 1.23. When the Dutch settlers arrived in Cape Town in 1652, the local inhabitants were the Khoi. That's true. They were the Khoi who were settling in Cape Town. Right. Let's go to 1.24. The demarcation board consists of 7 to 10 members who are appointed by the Minister of Local Government. That's false. That's a false statement. That's a false statement. 1.25. In 1657, some of the Dutch soldiers were released from duty and became farmers called the free burghers. It's true, they were released and they become farmers. Right. Let's go to 1.26. Cape Town became the first urbanized area in South Africa. That's a true statement. It was the first to be urbanized in South Africa. Right. 1.27. Urbanization is the movement of people from urban areas to rural areas. That's a false statement. That's a false statement. The reverse is true. Urbanization is when people are moving from rural areas to urban areas, normally in search for employment. Right. Let's go to question 1.3. Choose the item in column B that matches the description in column A. Write only the letter A to J next to the question number. Right. 1.31. It is sometimes difficult to reconcile individual interests with group interest. Right. That's what you call a political factor. A political factor. It is very difficult to reconcile individual interest with group interest. Right, let's go to 1.32. Municipalities are municipalities are legal entities that can summon and be summoned. Right. That's what you call judicial factor. Judicial factor, which is H. It is a legal entity. Right, 1.33. Invading of land illegally and erecting of shacks on the land. That's what we call squatter camps. Squatter camps, which is an illegal erecting of shacks on the land, right? When you are invading the land illegally and you put shacks, right? It is what you call squatter. It's a squatter camp because it's not the land was not illegally settled, right? 1.34. Can assist the Speaker in performing some of the duties. Whip. A whip can assist, be here, right? A whip can assist the speaker in performing some of the duties, right? Let's go to 1.35. The mayoral system used in South Africa. Which one is the mayoral system used in South Africa? Right? We have what we call the weak mayoral system is the one that is used in South Africa. Weak mayoral system. Right, let's go to 1.36. The political office bearer who is entrusted with the appointment of the mayoral committee. The political office bearer who is entrusted with the appointment of the mayoral committee. That's the mayor. The mayor. D. Right. So let's go to 1.37. The accounting officer of a municipality. The accounting officer of a municipality, we call him the what? The municipal manager. The municipal manager. Right. So let's move on to section B. Section B. Right. So let's go to question 2. Question 2. Question 2. Right. Ugute is an inquisitive student and always wants to know how the demarcation board works. Explain the delimitation process to her. The delimitation process to her. We're supposed to explain the delimitation process to her. Right. So here, you're explaining the process to here, right? 2.1. 2.1. 2.1. Right. So, right. The board will get the number of voters in the area from the IEC and the location of the voting station. Once it happens, the MEC of local government determines the number of councillors for each municipality. Right. So the total number of the registered voters in the municipality is divided by the number of wards. Right. So the board calculates the number of wards, right, to ensure that the wards have the same number of councillors. Once it is done, the board consult with the stakeholders and communities before the ward boundaries are finished. And then after the finalization of the ward boundaries, the board must establish or publish its demarcation of wards in the provisional gazette and the relevant province. Right. So that's how demarcation process takes place. The board, they'll get the number of voters in the area and the location of the voting station. Once it is done, the MEC of the local government determines the number of councillors for each community or municipality, and then the total number of registered voters in the municipality is divided by the number of wards, right? And then the board will calculate the number of wards to ensure that the wards have the same number of councillors. Once it is done, the board consult the stakeholders and communities before the ward boundaries are finalized. And lastly, the board will have to publish its delimitation of wards in the provisional gazettes and the relevant provinces. Right. So let's go to question 2.2. Name 10 factors that steer the demarcation board's benchmark. Factors 10 factors. 2.2 factors. We need to write 10 factors that might steer the demarcation board's benchmark. So the first factor that we're going to talk about is interdependence. Interdependence. Right. 2, it might be the viability capacity. Viability capacity might be due to viability capacity. Viability capacity. Right. Might be, another factor is sharing and distribution. Sharing and distribution. Redistribution. Redistribution. Right. Other boundaries also steer demarcation. Other boundaries. We have traditional rural communities. Traditional rural communities. Another factor is rationalization. Right. Land use planning. Right. Coordination of programs. Coordination of programs. In services. Another factor is cohesiveness and integration. Right. And lastly, administration consequences. Administration consequences. Administration consequences. Right. So let's move on to question 2.3. 2.3. Urbanization has a big influence on municipalities and causes problems in rural and urban areas. Right. Urbanization has a big influence on municipalities and causes problems in rural and urban areas. Right. Question. Briefly discuss the problems that influence urbanization. All right. Problems that influence urbanization. Problems that influences urbanization. Question 2.3. Right. So we can find that municipalities cannot develop in rural areas as people are moving to cities, right? So municipalities in rural areas lose revenue. They lose revenue. All right. And they can't provide services because they do not have enough revenue. Right. And then people who who stay behind rural areas will later move as rural municipalities who cannot afford services. Right. People who stay behind will move to urban areas because of maybe a lack of services. Right. And then people coming to the city cannot find jobs. People coming to the city cannot find jobs. People coming to the city cannot find jobs. Right. So this leads to antisocial behaviors, leads to antisocial behaviors like crimes, e.g., crimes, alcohol abuse, and also drug abuse. So municipality must provide extra services for those people who move to the city. Must provide extra services to cater for those people. For the people who moved to the cities. Right. So municipalities aim to prevent unemployment, crimes, and healthy risks caused by squatting. They will try to prevent these ills, social ills. To prevent antisocial ills caused by squatting. Right. So let's move on to question 2.4. Question 2.4. We say the municipalities are legal entities that can summon or be summoned. Briefly explain this statement under the judicial factor, right? So you're supposed to explain why municipalities are legal entities that can summon and summoned. Right. So you can find that municipalities are the last level of government and are interdependent and interrelated, but have a separate legal existence. They have a separate legal existence with the government, but they are they are they are interdependent and interrelated with the government. So municipalities' existence is entrenched in the constitution, right? It is entrenched in the constitution. So municipalities have legal, legislative, and executive authority, so which make them a legal entity. They can stand on their own, right, in the judicial, right? So the Constitution gives municipalities the right to exercise its powers or perform its function. So, because they are legal entities, what does it mean? They also have what contractual trading powers and can summon or can be summoned. They can even summon the government, or they can be summoned by the government. Right. So that's the point here. That's how this can be explained. How this can be explained. Right. So let's go to question 3.1. Local authorities are not totally autonomous. Certain control measures are put in place to control the function of local municipalities. Right. So the question is, discuss the role of the premier of the province in municipalities. The role of the premier of municipalities, of the province in municipalities. Right. So the premier, so we are going to discuss the roles of the premier. So the role of the premier in municipalities, the role of the premier in municipalities. So we are going to discuss the role of the premier in municipalities. In municipalities. In municipalities. Right. So the premier can give advices to act in a specific manner to the municipalities. Two, you can stop municipalities to act in a way that is not in the interest of the inhabitants. To act in a way that is not in the interest of the inhabitants. Right. You can also intervene if municipal activities or affairs get out of hand. Intervene in municipalities municipal activities gets out of hand. The premier can intervene, right? 4, the premier may advise on the course of action that a municipality may take in advise on the course of action. Right. 5, the premier may restrain municipality from hasty action by withholding their approval. Municipality from hasty action by withholding their approval. And also the premier may stimulate action by putting pressure on the municipality. May stimulate action by putting pressure on the municipality. Right. So let's move on to question 3.2. Question 3.2. Discuss the function of the management committee. The function of the management committee. Discuss the function of the management committee. Discuss the function of the management committee. 3.2. Functions of the management committee. So we're going to list the functions of the management committee. 1, it receives reports from committees. It receives reports from committees and forward them to the council. Reports from the committees, and forward them to the council with the recommendations. Two, it identifies the needs of the municipality. The needs of the municipality. Right. 3, it also receives and evaluates those needs in order of priorities. Receives and evaluates receives and evaluates these needs in order of priorities, right? The management committee recommends council programs and services. Recommends council programs and services to address these needs, to address these needs. And also, it recommends the best method to deliver these programs. The best methods to deliver these programs. Recommends the best methods to deliver the programs. Right. Let's go to question 3.3. Question 3.3. Right. The issuing of licenses is one of the functions delegated to municipalities. Discuss how a municipality issues commercial licenses. 3.3. How municipalities issues commercial licenses. How municipalities issues commercial licenses. Right. So, one, the municipalities are involved in business licensing. So the municipalities control premises to ensure health conditions. They also issue control certificates that are needed to get trading licenses from SARS. They also use the license committee to deal with the licenses, and then health inspectors will be instructed to come and inspect the business, right? And also can take maybe action to those businesses who do not comply with regulations. So municipalities are involved in business licensing. So it controls premises to ensure healthy conditions. Right. It issue controls certificates which issue control certificates that are needed to get trading licenses, that are needed to get trading licenses from sales. South Africa revenue. Right. It also uses the license committee to deal with licenses. The license committee to deal with licenses and health inspectors inspect businesses and take action if not complying with the regulations. Right. So let's move on to question 3.4. State 10 disqualifications of becoming a councillor. 10 disqualifications of becoming a councillor. Right. So you are disqualified to become a councillor if you are three point four 10 disqualification of becoming a councillor. Right. So, one, if you are a public servant, is a public servant and receives remuneration, which is salary or compensation from the government or from the state. Right. If you are disqualified from voting, three, if you have been declared an unrehabilitable insolvent, If you are declared insolvent, you cannot become a councillor. 4, if you are a member of another municipality, if you are a member of another municipality, five, if you are already a councillor, if you are already a councillor, unless they seek re-election. If you want to be re-elected again. 6, if your spouse is an employee of the council, is an employee of the council, if your spouse is an employee of the council, right? If you were declared unfit, if you were declared unfit by a court of law, that you are not fit to become a councillor. 8, if you owe money to the municipality. Number 9, if you receive money from or if you receive remuneration from the council or from the municipality, you cannot become a councillor. And lastly, if you are disqualified from voting for the National Assembly, if you are disqualified, from voting for the National Assembly, so these points can disqualify you from becoming a councillor. This can disqualify you from becoming a councillor. So let's go back to question 4. Question 4. State 4 powers granted to the local authority. powers of the local authorities. Should fall. Question 4. Open 1. Powers of the local authorities. Right. So these powers includes they can appoint and dismiss officials. Appoint and dismiss officials. They can also enter into contracts. Right. The municipalities can raise loans to render services. They can also make bylaws. They can make bylaws. They can also exercise control over the town. Over the town or city. Four point two. Right. Let's go to 4.2. State 5 responsibilities of IEC. State 5 responsibilities of the IEC. Right. So we're going to state responsibilities of the IEC. Right. 1. It does voter education. Voter education. Right. It also compiles timetables for the process to be followed. To be followed. It also appoints a municipal electoral office. Appoints a municipal electoral officer. It also registers political parties. It also compile a list of candidates. And lastly, they have also power to identify voting stations. Let's go to 4.3. 4.3. Let's go to 4.3. 4.3. 4.3. Briefly give 5 disadvantages of the management committee system. Disadvantages of the management committee system. Disadvantages. Four point three. Right. One, we find that the councillors who are not members of the executive committee lose interest in management administration. Who are not members. Who are not members of the executive committee lose interest. They lose interest in municipal administration. Right. And two, council meetings they tend to be a rubber stamp. They tend to be a rubber stamp for the executive committee. Recommendations. Right. Three, councillors may not perform any other paid work except for being a councillor. Any other paid work except for being a councillor. Right. Number four, councillors may not obtain any financial interest in any business of the municipality. not obtain any financial interest in any business of the municipality. Right. And lastly, councillors appear on behalf of another person before the council at a cost. Councillors, they appear on behalf of another person before the council at a fee. And you can find that councillors must declare in writing all financial interest and income, and also they may not be involved in bribery and corruption. Right. Let's move on to the next question, which is question 5. Right. 5.1, explain how local municipalities render services to electricity as a classification of services. Explain how local municipalities render the service of electricity as a classification of service municipality. So, municipalities normally they generate their own electricity, but not anymore nowadays. So now municipalities buy in bulk from Excom and resell it to residents for a profit. Right. So the municipality lose money if residents do not pay electrical bills. They lose money if the residents do not, because they already bought in bulk. Right. So meters are installed at homes nowadays, and the meter readings are taken to prepare bills. So prepaid boxes are now installed in homes nowadays. So electricity is paid before use. So electricity provision involves building of power stations and laying of cables. That's how the municipality render services of electricity. How the municipality render services of the electricity, right? How they render services of the right. So let's go to 5.2. 5.2. State 10 characteristics of services is identified by the Municipal System Act, right? So we're going to state characteristics of services. Characteristics of services, right? So we can find that municipality render services of a local nature. We need to say the render service to the local community, right? So services differ from one community to another, and then the municipality aims to improve the welfare of the community, right? But the municipality cannot be forced to render services. The municipality make autonomous decisions and delegate services. That's what they also do. And also they they decide on the nature, scope, and time to render services. Right. So municipalities needs they make sure that the needs of the residents are identified or determined by the types of services that they need. Right. The municipalities are only rented, so the services are only rendered if funds are available to the municipality. Right. So the inhabitants pay for the services. They pay for water, they pay for other services like waste disposal, etc. Right. So the residents must make their needs known to the council. They're supposed to make their needs to the council. right? So these are the characteristics of services identified by the municipal system, right? They render services of a local nature. So services differs from one municipality to another. The municipalities aims to improve the welfare of the community, and it cannot be forced to render services. They have to decide on the nature, scope, and time to render the service. The needs of residents are determined by the type of services that they require. Right. So services are only rendered if funds are available, and it is the duty of the inhabitants to pay for the services. And lastly, residents must make their needs known to the councillors. Right. So let's go to question 5.3. There are various factors affecting the functioning of municipalities. There are various factors affecting the functioning of municipalities. Describe the influence of the economic factor. Right. So we are going to discuss or describe the influence of the economic factor on which affects the functioning of the municipalities. Right. So you can find that they may not benefit from contracts to provide goods and services to the municipality. They may not perform any other paid work except as a councillor. So, question 5.3. There are various factors affecting the functioning of municipalities. Describe the influence of the economic factor. Right. So, municipalities may not operate private businesses. They must provide services for the private sector that will invest in and start businesses. The investment results in more jobs and more funds for the development of the community. So the investors and industries contribute service charges and rates to municipalities equals revenue for the municipalities. So the municipal policies can only be implemented if the necessary funds are available. Right. So the economic welfare of the state will determine policy on a local level. The economic welfare of the state will determine policy on local levels. Right. So let's move on to the last question. For the last question. The last question. Let's move on to the last question. To the last question. Right. Provincial ordinances prohibits councillors from entering into contracts with their municipalities. State 5 cases where they are exempted from the law. Right. So they are exempted from the law if one, they may not benefit from the contracts to provide goods and services, if they may not perform any other paid work except as a councillor, if they may not obtain any financial interest in any business of the municipality, if they may not appear for a fee or on behalf of another person before the council, if they must declare in writing all financial interest and income, and lastly, if they may not be involved in any bribery and corruption. So these are the 5 cases where they are exempted from the law. Right. If they do not benefit. They may not benefit. Right. from contracts. They may not perform. They may not perform any other paid work except of a counselor, except for a counselor. Three, they may not obtain financial interest. Financial interest in any business. Right. And then they may not appear for a fee. For a fee on behalf of another person. Right. When they declare in writing all financial interest and income, you have to declare in writing all financial interest and income. Right. And lastly, they may not be involved in any bribery and corruption. So thank you so much for your time. Wish you the best.